Okay, so just a reminder that we are going to upload the recording of this onto YouTube. So if you'd rather not have your face shown on screen when we talk to one another, then you're very welcome to turn off the camera. Yeah, incidentally, by the way, Facebook have told us that they're going to stop keeping video recordings on their servers, which I can only imagine is just like an absolutely huge and very expensive business. I mean, we got literally hundreds of hours of videos on our Facebook, stretching back to when COVID happened, and so potentially those could be lost. So, anyone got any ideas as to how we can download them? Okay, but then it's how we make those videos available to people. I mean, it is an incredibly rich resource, just as our YouTube channel is. If you want to investigate the Buddha's teaching, a practical application of the Buddha's teaching, there are video series on Vipassana, loving kindness meditation, and condition dependent origination. There are loads and loads of these Q&As on there, so there's a richness of material. It would be a shame to lose it, but however, on the other hand, I did think, well, it's proof that things are transient. Anyway, moving on to this evening. So I got one question here, which we can discuss to begin with, and then whatever other questions or comments you'd like to make about the Buddha's teaching, we can do that too. So this relates to last Wednesday's meeting we had at the House of Inner Tranquility, where in discussion with a meditator about, I think that the discussion had moved on to fear and anxiety, and the meditator was talking and about that, and the thought arose in my mind, it's only pain, it's just pain. And so I thought I would just share that. It's just pain. Apparently this is I'm sure Sarah won't mind me saying it's Sarah's question. She found when she'd first heard me say that, because I've said it before, I remembered how radically shocking that comment seemed to me. That was in the first year of her training, and deeply confusing until you explained the practice in more detail. I wonder if you could talk more about the nature of pain and feelings as part of the Buddhist training. Yeah, pain. Where would we be without it? We seem to have this strange relationship with pain. We don't want it. We don't want to experience it ever until there's something in our lives which is so important. We don't mind how much pain we experience, because that thing is so important to us. Like someone will run a marathon. I've run a half marathon. I found that so painful, I decided never to run again. However, I did put up with a lot of pain, willingly. Each one of us here is only here because our mothers were willing to put up with such incredible pain and discomfort. Yeah. So the idea that we always think pain is a terrible thing and we never want it is actually a bit of a fib we tell ourselves. But when it boils down to it, it's just pain. It's just painful feelings. I'm not being cruel. I appreciate that there are people who experience a lot amount of physical pain and mental anguish. However, the whole purpose of the training is to understand how it is that feelings give rise to craving for life to be different than it is, and that the craving and the actions, the clinging attachment and the actions that come out of the craving are cause for further experience and therefore inevitably further pain. And so our task as meditators is to look at feelings. Feelings arise upon the 6 kinds of sensory contacts. seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, and mind. They will give rise to some kind of feeling. That feeling might be pleasant, it might be unpleasant, or it might be what we call neutral feeling. And the vast majority of feelings are neutral feelings. We couldn't conduct life if we were just being pinged from pleasant to unpleasant feeling. The vast majority of feelings we don't even notice because they're neutral. We notice the pleasant feelings more strongly and the painful feelings more strongly. The Buddha said in regards to pleasant feelings, that pleasant feelings give rise to the tendency towards greed, i.e. we want to experience more pleasant feelings, and unpleasant feelings, painful feelings, give rise to hatred because we want to get rid of the thing that we think is causing us the painful feelings. And in regards to neutral feeling, he said that conditions ignoring, because neutral feelings are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. They're difficult to detect. So our task as meditators, who are presumably intent on realizing the mysteries of life through exploring conscious experience, it is impossible to do that without experiencing painful feelings, because painful feelings are inevitable. Pleasant feelings are inevitable. Painful feelings are inevitable. Union with the unloved is inevitable. Separation from the loved is inevitable. Being unable to get what we want is inevitable. And that really sums up the Buddha's first noble truth. There is suffering, life is suffering, and there is grief, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and despair. So it is impossible to follow an insight path. It is impossible to become wise unless we're willing to accept the inevitability of pain occurring when we're practicing mindfulness. I break that down into displeasure when it's the mental side of things, and discomfort when it's the physical side of things. And I find that to be a useful way of looking at it. But our objective is to learn to be content with whatever arises in order to gain wisdom into it. What are the salient qualities of painful feelings? They arise due to conditions, so they're impersonal. They are resultant, which means there's nothing you can do about it. If the conditions allow it, painful feelings will arise, both physical and mental, and they are entirely transient. And what is the cause of our distress? It's not actually the painful feeling, it is the rejection of the painful feeling. It is the belief that the painful feeling should not be here, and the tussling with it, the fighting with it, the attempt to remove it only ties us ever more tightly to painful feelings. And so we tend not to say it's only a painful feeling. What we tend to say is it's a painful feeling. It's really important. And it's the importance we attach to it is because we're constantly trying to get rid of it. And ironically, the more you let go and allow painful feelings and observe painful feelings and are mindful of painful feelings, mindfully note them, accept their presence, the less you experience painful feelings, the less you tie yourself and attach yourself to the problem of painful feelings, the less importance you attach to painful feelings. And as a consequence of that mindful investigation and observation, painful feelings have a chance to follow their nature, which is just simply having arisen to pass away. And given that I don't think there's one person on the, I've got a list of everyone present this evening. I don't think there's one person on that list who is growing younger. I think we're all growing older, and therefore the amount of painful feelings that we will experience will be on the increase from here on in. So you might as well start getting used to it. You might as well start embracing both pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings, to investigate them, to look at them, to understand what they are. And through that investigation, you dissolve the tendency towards resisting them. They're inevitable, they're going to happen. They're worldly conditions, pleasure and pain. So the more you investigate it, the more you allow, the more you accept, the less you reject, the less you actually experience as a consequence. Or you can put it another way and say, the feelings do not seem to reverberate for as long or as intensely, because all of that is the action of the resistance that gives it that sense. Yeah. But as I said on Wednesday night, like, I've been doing this almost 25 years, weirdly, unbelievable. If my big toe hits that table leg, you better believe there's going to be a painful feeling. That's not going to change anytime soon, because that's just human condition. That's just the conditions we have. So those are my thoughts about it. Did anybody have any further thoughts around that? Anything they'd like to clarify? Anything you'd like to discuss about? Sarah, does that cover it for you? We'll start with Sarah. It was your question. Where have you gone, Sarah?
Hello.
Hiya.
Hi. Just thank you. Yes, very nice. And just something else that, well, it's implicit in what you're saying, but really, under your instruction, there are times when you will say, look, now it's a good time to look at feelings specifically, and we actually train to look at it, and that is something that we can do, and it's so, I used the word radical. It's just the training is so amazing in the sense we don't even recognize there are these things, these factors that can be looked at and found out about. And it is true and it is real and it does transform the way we experience life.
Yeah.
For the better, you know.
Yeah. So on a very practical level, what you can do is, if you're practicing mindful noting and you want to know more about feelings, note sensory contacts. If you know your wheel of dependent origination, you know that it is sensory contacts that condition the arising of feelings. And so with every sensory contact, whether that's a sound, shape, color, taste, touch, smell, or if it's a mental contact, i.e. the arising of a memory, a thought, that will prompt the arising of a feeling. It's not, it doesn't determine the strength of the feeling, but it does determine whether it's a pleasant feeling, an unpleasant feeling, or a neutral feeling. And as I say, most feelings are neutral, because otherwise we just couldn't, we'd just be bombarded with all these pleasant, unpleasant feelings. We'd never get on with anything. So the vast majority of feelings are actually neutral, meaning that they don't impinge. It is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It is neutral. And then you get pleasant feelings. So I don't know, you're just meditating away, and there's maybe the sun starts shining through the window, and warmth catches your head, and there's a pleasant feeling that arises. Or perhaps somebody starts using a pneumatic drill outside, and it prompts displeasure, shall we say. And our task is simply to note the nature of feelings to arise upon the contact, and for its nature to pass away again. We can only do that if we're not fighting with feelings. If you're trying to get the meditation to be blissful, you'll experience the opposite. And if you're trying to get away from painful feelings, you'll experience the opposite. Yeah. You get when we crave, we get the opposite back of what we want. So it's learning to rest, content with whatever feeling arises, and to explore it. Does that cover it, Sarah? Yeah. Ellen.
Hi, Paul. A story for me from last week, which is exactly what you're talking about, I think. I go to the gym and work out with the trainer, and I trained 2 days in a row, which is rare for me. And whatever we were doing, it was very uncomfortable, but I was making myself do it, like you were referring to running a marathon. And so I saw myself experiencing this big, lumpy, constant thing called physical discomfort in my muscles. And I went, okay. But what I ended up doing was, it was on the rowing machine. So I said, I think it's what you just said, is focus on some physicality. And instead, I was able to notice different parts of my body. Like I would notice my foot, and then I felt my heel, then I felt a muscle partway up my leg. It was a completely different experience. Like the big lump of, ew, pain, gone.
Yeah.
Astonishing.
Yeah. We have to establish the difference between like an injury and the complaining of the body that is actually being trained. And the pain of being trained is that resistance is actually proof that you're getting fitter. It is literally a good thing. It's a good pain to have. I just every morning I run up. I do what's called mountain climbers vigorously, just breathing through my nose for 5 minutes, and it's just amazing what it does to the body. But I've had to learn that the body complains. It complains bitterly. It says stop. But there isn't actually anything wrong. It's just that the body is being trained. And so it's learning to, to see the difference there and to recognize that there is such a thing as good pain. Do you agree with that, Ellen? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've one follow-up question about labeling pain. Well, in the aggregate. So in the physical domain, there's pressure, there's temperature, there's touch. And this was, I don't know, when I was on retreat. For the life of me, like, what's pain? I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't label it. I couldn't put it in a bucket. I mean, I can call it pain, but I was just curious what your answer would be to that.
Well, it's like, so what is consciousness? And you say, well, it's knowing an object. And you say, yeah, but what is it? And it's the same with feeling. It's like, well, the feeling is like, as it were, the flavor of the object. Yes, but what is it? It's a painful feeling is a painful feeling.
Oh, so so pain, like physical pain, it's a feeling.
Yes. This is a very good point that we need to distinguish. Feeling is always mental. Feeling is a mental phenomenon. It might relate to a physical contact, but feeling is a mental aggregate. Yeah.
Right.
So you've got two kinds of contact. You've got a physical contact, like a sensation, pressure, perhaps, or you've got a mental contact, like a memory. They both produce a painful feeling. The feeling is always mental.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you have to distinguish between the physical contact and the mental contact. But the feeling is always a mental constituent of experience.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Is that clear for everyone? Because that seems to be one of these things that baffles people. And with all of this, even saying, well, what is a feeling? It's like there comes a point where talk, concepts, it reaches the end of what it's capable of doing. We all know what a painful feeling is. We all know what a pleasant feeling is through experience. And the Buddha's teaching is experience-led. Yeah. We want the experience of a feeling arising upon a contact. That's what liberates. That's what produces the wisdom. Hilda, good evening.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask about that, because isn't there like you can divide it into, well, obviously pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings, but then also bodily and mental pleasant, bodily and mental unpleasant.
Yes.
We're looking at the aggregates. So I was just getting a bit confused then about what you just explained there.
Okay. With all of this, just bear in mind that it, again, I'll just repeat myself, it is experience-led. So all confusions arise out of thinking. So yeah, in the books, it clearly defines that you can distinguish, and which you can do anyway, because that is exactly what I've just been talking about. That there is a mental component like a memory, and there's the feeling that arises upon the memory. The feeling might be pleasant, it might be unpleasant. Equally, it could be a pleasant or unpleasant feeling arising on a sensation or a sound. Yeah, it could be a physical or a taste or a smell, and we know this. We know this. But what we tend to do is we associate the flavor of the object. So, for instance, it's a bad smell. So there is a smell that causes the arising of an unpleasant feeling, and it's just distinguishing at the ultimate level. It's distinguishing between the object and the feeling. The feeling is not the object. The object is not the feeling. The smell is the object. The feeling is the feeling that arises based on it. So it because what we tend to do is we tend to blame the object for the painful feeling that we're experiencing. We don't need to blame anything. We just need to observe the transient nature of feelings. Yeah. Birgit.
I just have another question with that. If you find, like, I understand on a sort of theoretical level that there's a difference between the object and the feeling, and that if, like, let's say I have cramp in my leg, that is maybe I don't know, hardness or tension, and that there's a painful feeling going with it. With regards to the experience, it still feels like a painful leg. So is that something that will
That's the way it's
time?
That's the way it's conceptualized.
Okay, so as long as I know that it's two different things, that's good enough, or is that something that becomes different in experience?
What do you mean good enough?
I was wondering whether with more experience, I might have a more experiential understanding of the difference between the object and the feeling, rather than just knowing because I've heard you say that, and because
that doesn't change anything, does it? If we just leave it at somebody said, or I read in a book that, no way, shape, or form does that change anything. You will still react to painful feelings in exactly the same way with aversion. The only way of making any real difference is through the mindful investigation. That's the only way.
And with mindful investigation, there's a different element to it of seeing that pass away and note that it doesn't last. Like I find that helps.
Yes, that's going deeper, because it's going deeper than the intellectual, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, to answer your question, yeah, absolutely. Our powers to be able to define things and separate things out and see things in incredible detail as your mindfulness develops, as your concentration develops, as your investigation develops, so your ability to tease out the details grows and grows and grows. And it becomes obvious, not thinking about it, not intellectualizing it, not being a philosopher, but just attending to the reality through mindful observation, that indeed the feeling is a different component than the object. And it becomes very obvious that there first had to be the arising of that contact for the feeling to arise. And if that contact did not arise, the consequent feeling would not arise. And then the consequent craving for things to be different would not arise. Yeah. So you can see that feeling is absolutely quintessentially important, if that's even a thing. It's so important to the whole of the Buddha's teaching, because so much rides on the feeling and our understanding of the feeling as to whether we enter into craving or we do not. Does that help, Birgit?
Thank you.
Weirdly, after the last Zoom meeting we did, I downloaded the recording, and AI now gauges you and how well you actually did, and it gives you a report as to how well you did. And apparently I don't ask enough questions. So I've been told off by AI. So I need to ask more questions. I need to ask more questions, and you need to answer them for me. So there we go. If you'd like to talk, I see there's some chats here, so I will just very, very quickly, but please do use the raise hand button if you want to have a chat.
I've forgotten where it is, sorry.
Linda, you're doing really well. Well, you're here now, so
Sorry.
it's just down at the bottom under chat, I think, or react, under react. Yeah, but you're here now.
Yeah, I'll put my glasses on. Anyway, I'd just like to share something that happened to me over the weekend. Helping a friend move into a house. She's got 2 young children. She's moved into this 4-bedroom house. And I was hoovering and helping, and we had a nice meal afterwards. Everything was lovely. And then she took me home, and I took my boots off, and I had the most excruciating pain in my big toe, my right. And I don't remember hitting it or stumping it or knocking myself into it, but the pain was horrendous, and really horrendous. And I don't think I dealt with it very well at all, because I then ran into my kitchen looking for, paracetamol. I had to take them for the pain. Anyway, it went away, but the next day it was bruised. It's all right now, but I'm afraid I did have to take some medication for it. And I just feel as if I was very mindful of the pain, but I don't think I dealt with it very well. But I can't beat myself up about it.
Yeah, because this is the problem of comparison, you see, because you dealt with it in the best way you knew in that moment. And I don't know what it would be comparable to, because certainly I don't think the Buddha's teaching is saying that if you're in extraordinary agony and you have the wherewithal to get medicine, that you shouldn't partake of the medicine. That's not what this is saying at all. Rather, what it's probably saying is, are you aware of what's unfolding? Are you simply blindly reacting? And that's simply a question of time and application. And that's why we sit in meditation. We sit in meditation because that's like going down the gym and working the muscles. We get to use the muscles the rest of the day. And with mindfulness, through the formal practice of sitting, you are more likely to be able to use mindfulness in other areas of life as well. And that becomes a burgeoning thing. But most importantly is like, based on what you've just told me, is that it's not about it's about each of us exploring our conscious experience as it unfolds and learning lessons through practicing mindfulness and discovery and finding out things about how we react. And we are always able to make adjustments as we go along, and we're free to make those adjustments and learn new things. And so it's not comparable to anyone else. It's your journey, and this is the way it's unfolding. And so the sense in which, I should have done better in that situation, for me, it just doesn't qualify. We just do the best we can. Does that help, Linda?
Yes, yeah, it did, because it was just excruciating pain, and maybe I haven't experienced that recently because I keep quite well and fit, but it was horrendous.
Yeah, sorry you had to go through that, but you did decide to get a rebirth as a human being, so.
But I think I let myself down badly, but still.
No, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Let's keep it positive. Thanks for that, Linda.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I fully accept that people do go through incredible experiences, which can be very painful. And I'm not for one moment lessening the reality of that for people. I'm just saying that if you practice mindfulness and you're willing to practice mindfulness of feelings, it will show you so much about how craving works and wanting life to be different works. And as a consequence of throwing the light on that, you will actually suffer less as a consequence. Got to have the light of mindfulness beaming on everything. Hello, someone called Denise. Denise, hello.
Yes. Because I'm actually new to this, but I wanted to ask. So in other words, mindfulness is the ability to experience or to know that you're having some kind of feeling, or say it's fear or something like that, and that mindfulness would be, in other words, it would become exasperated because you have reacted to that experience, in other words, the feeling, rather than just looking at it from a distance, I guess. I'm not quite sure. So in other words, it's sort of like just trying to observe it from a distance rather than trying to not react to it. I'm not 100% sure. Like if a fearful feeling comes in, and say for example, it comes all the time, and it's like a message that says, "Oh, you're doing it again," or "You're doing this again," "You're doing this again," and then there's always a reaction or something. That makes sense to me, but it's sort of like how do you practice preventing yourself from reacting? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. I think I understand where you're coming from, and I should work harder at just making it clear what I mean by mindfulness. So mindfulness is just the simple non-judgmental awareness of what is present. So right now there is, I would assume, I don't want to assume, but I would assume for you that there is a non-judgmental awareness of shape and color. There's a non-judgmental awareness perhaps of sensations in the body or sounds. So mindfulness is a naturally occurring phenomenon. It's a naturally occurring part of our makeup, psychological makeup. We use mindfulness all the time. However, we're just deliberately using it. And so we do this thing called mindful investigation, which is just mindfully noting that shape, that color, that sound, that sensation. And gradually, as you do it more and more, you start to become aware that there are indeed feelings and mental states like fear, anxiety, worry, and so forth. Now, on your second point, I'd say I don't think you can stop yourself reacting. And I don't think that there is a need. We don't use mindfulness to try to stop us from reacting.
Okay.
Rather, what it is, we want to see the whole process. So, for instance, if I always use the same examples, I'm very boring like this, but if I'm up a ladder, I want there to be some fear there. The fear is doing a very good job at keeping me on the ladder. Yeah. Unfortunately, it does too good a job at keeping me on the ladder, and I get frozen on the ladder. So if I employ mindfulness, I can reach a point where I understand the fear and the necessary discomfort, because it's the discomfort that is alerting me and keeping me awake and alert. And I can see the process, and I can see that reacting blindly to the discomfort engendered by the fear is what makes the fear even more intense. And that with time and application, there is the ability to recognize that it's the resistance to the discomfort of the fear which is the real problem, not the fear itself. The fear is simply an aspect of our minds which is doing its job, which is hopefully helping us, preventing us just walking off sideways off the ladder in a mindless moment. So really it is learning about, it is practicing so that we become more and more comfortable with allowing the whole of this process to unfold, including the reactions, so that we can see what it is that causes our suffering. Yeah, I think that's probably how.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really good question. And it might all implications that come from that. But yeah, essentially that's it. Does that help, Denise?
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah. It does take time. It's the willingness to practice mindfulness every day, mindful noting, and gradually we allow ourselves to see more and more of the process. Peter.
Hi, Paul. A couple of points relating to what you said just now. One is relating to neutral feelings, but I'll come to that in a second. The first thing, I just wanted to relate a kind of an incident that happened a number of years ago when I had quite a bad injury. I used to be a very keen and quite good gymnast and acrobat, and I was, doing acrobatics and gymnastics at a gymnasium, and I had an accident, and I hurt my thumb really badly, and it bent backwards, and it was facing the other direction, and it was obviously come loose from the socket, and they couldn't get an ambulance to me because the traffic was really, really bad. This is in London, and they suggested I walk to the hospital that was only about a mile away. So I walked to the hospital, and there was a bit of a waiting list. I can't give you a painkiller if you've got an injury like that until you're actually seen. So you just have to kind of suck it up, basically. So I was sitting in the waiting room with this, quite bad injury in my hand, and just, with beads of sweat coming out of my brow, trying to deal with this pain. And I was trying to use, my limited knowledge of the teaching, and that in that situation, I was trying to be mindful of the pain, and being aware of, I understood intellectually that the pain didn't last forever. It arises and passes away. But all I could really notice was the pain was happening, and then it stopped because I was noticing it, and the perception was arising, and I was making a note, and then it would go back to the pain, and I'll go back to the noting, back to the pain. And I went on doing that for, I can't remember how long, but in the end, the pain was so intense, I just gave up, because it's just so exhausting trying to be mindful of an exquisitely painful experience. But it did, because it flitted so quickly between me noting it and feeling it and noting it and feeling it, it seemed to just morph into a big lump of pain, as much as I tried to analyze it at the time. And in the end, I just found it so exhausting, because it was just physically so tiring to try to concentrate on a painful feeling.
Can I interject there?
Yeah.
What were you using the mindfulness for?
Well, I was, there was a kind of lofty part of me was trying to use this experience as a potential kind of opportunity to investigate the nature of what pain is.
Okay, why would it exhaust you?
Well, because it was just tiring, I think, just concentrating on the pain, and then
what was tiring?
maybe I was over concentrating on something and trying to get it right, so to speak, in inverted commas, trying to.
I appreciate. Sorry, yeah, Peter. I appreciate it was a long time ago, and you might approach things differently now. But I just think for everyone, I'm just trying to tease out, because this idea that practicing mindfulness is exhausting. Well, something else is going on. Something else is going on that makes it exhausting.
No, sure, absolutely. But in this case, because there was an exquisite pain involved, I was probably over concentrating or trying to really work out when the pain stopped and the noting started and all that type of stuff. I guess I was trying to do it in my naivety because I thought it would eventually alleviate the suffering, the mental suffering. Is that a schoolboy error? I guess.
Schoolboy error, yeah.
Yeah.
And I wish in the situation, I can completely understand. I can completely understand that indeed, with no access to any kind of pain relief, sucking your thumb didn't seem quite appropriate in the circumstances. I can see that, yes, you would be willing to try anything to help alleviate the pain. So it was trying to alleviate the pain. Whereas when we practice mindfulness, we're not trying to alleviate anything.
No.
There's another point too I'd like to bring out, which is we never return to the same object.
Yeah.
Never. It's always a new object. It's not the same pain. And because conceptually we conceive it as being the same pain, that is how we see it. And then we wonder how on earth we could be saying feelings don't last. Well, feelings don't last moment to moment. And when at the ultimate level, when the mind takes another object, that feeling no longer exists. Then it's not returning to that pain. It is a new moment of pain that the mind is aware of.
Yeah.
And as you break it down in that way, you can get right down into really very, very momentary occurrence of contact. And you start to explore how it is that these contacts are so fleeting and the feelings that derive from those are so fleeting. That's when somebody's mindfulness and their concentration and their investigation are reaching very mature phase, that they're able to distinguish the most minute moments of contact, and not one contact and not one feeling is ever repeated. Yeah, it's necessary to bring that out.
No. Obviously, this is a while ago. This is about 25 years ago. In my naivety at that time, I had some, vague intellectual concept of, every moment is different and it's not the same pain. And I was just trying to use everything that I'd learned so far from the centre to try and deal with this extremely painful situation. But it was it was interesting because, before the teaching, I would have just given into the pain and wailed and tried to get a painkiller of some sort, but I was trying to deal with it in a slightly different way to what I'm habitually conditioned myself to react in. So it was an interesting situation trying to
just something else to bring out here, which is, and I'm not accusing you of this at all, I'm just saying because I'm thinking it, we're not trying to be He-Man, we're not trying to be the strong people of spiritual exploration, like we can put up with anything at all times. It's like we're not. We're human beings. We can put up with a certain amount, and then there is overload in all kinds of different ways. And as we progress, as our insight matures, it becomes possible to greet so much more with acceptance and surrender and mindful exploration and observation. But please never think that this is about, somehow being superhuman and conquering, the human condition in that way. And like I say, I'm not saying that that's what you're suggesting for a moment, but
no.
Perhaps in our youth.
In my youth, I had mixed up ideas from what I'd learned as well of, jhanic abilities to kind of completely disassociate from pain and all that sort of stuff. But I wasn't trying to go down that route. I was
It's difficult to get into jhana when your thumb is pointing the wrong direction.
Exactly. Yeah, I guess that might be the case. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was about neutral feelings. I'm relatively okay at being mindful of an unpleasant feeling arising or a pleasant feeling arising. However, a neutral feeling, I must admit, I'm not very skilled at noting when a neutral feeling arises or pass it away because it's so subtle. I think every feeling has a sort of a touch of either being pleasant or unpleasant incrementally. So I can't actually find the neutral feeling.
Okay, well let me help you with that, because I went through the same thing, and so that's why I took up sense contact as a particular subject, in order specifically to determine when there was a pleasant feeling and when there was an unpleasant feeling. And what I discovered was that there were an awful lot of contacts that wouldn't go into either bucket. They wouldn't go into the produces pleasant feeling bucket, and they wouldn't go into the produces painful feeling bucket. Those are the neutral feelings. It's the absence of a strong flavor that is the nature of a neutral feeling.
Yeah,
it doesn't produce. That's why the Buddha said it's neutral feeling that tends towards ignoring, because it doesn't give a strong feeling with it, because its nature is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So all you have to do is just take up the mindful observation of sensory contacts, note the pleasant feelings that arise on a contact, note the painful feeling that rises on a contact. And when you're going, yeah, but I'm not sure whether that doesn't seem to have a feeling attached to it at all, that's neutral feeling.
Right. I think thanks for clearing that up, because I used to, again, in my naivety when I started this training a long time ago, is I thought any feeling that wasn't unpleasant was pleasant as far as I was concerned, because I hated unpleasant feelings. So I thought if it wasn't an unpleasant feeling, then it's a pleasant feeling. I understand now it's a little bit more subtle than that, but that's what I this is in my kind of 20s, how I was reacting to it, because I just thought anything that isn't unpleasant to me is pleasant. So it was quite hard to see the subtleties of neutrality.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, if you take that up as an investigation, I think you might find the answer there.
Yeah, thank you for that, though. Thanks,
Peter. Thanks for your contribution. Did I ask enough questions? I'll try with Claire. Claire, how are you? Does that count as a question?
Hi. Yeah. My question is becoming more neutral or noticing more neutrality progress?
Yes, I'm only pausing because of the word progress.
Yeah, so I did question I had to say something, so I was struggling, because I know you're trying not to progress. We just need to get rid of attaining.
No, it's because I also appreciate when someone's new to the teaching, there are all kinds of sort of like doubts and uncertainties about, well, what is it I'm supposed to be doing? How is it, and so I don't want to be going, no, Claire, there's no progress. What are you talking about? No. If it is,
the more you let go of progress,
the more you let go of progress, the more you see.
The more neutral.
You're talking about, perhaps you're talking maybe about sort of becoming more equanimous with things, less reactive.
Yeah, which is different, isn't it? Maybe I was getting them a bit confused.
Which is absolutely fair enough. And yes, you're right. It's absolutely the case that as you investigate more, free from trying to get somewhere, free from the idea of progress, free from any kind of comparison, but it's just you wanting to explore the nature of your experience, that as you see more into the transient nature of things, the more you see how blind reaction actually just perpetuates the situation that you don't want, the more equanimous you become, the more even-minded you become, you could perhaps say a little bit more detached, and far more ability to let things pass without getting caught up in them. Absolutely, that is the case, yeah.
Is there a link with what you're saying to becoming more sorry, I've done it again, becoming more something, to being more neutral, or to
or less, can we say less blindly reactive?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So we react because we ignore. Like if people truly see how fleeting painful feelings are, that establishes a new relationship where there is far less tendency to react blindly to things. It doesn't mean you'll never react. And in some instances, it's the right thing to react. But a huge lessening in the sense in which everything is wrong or something is wrong, and the ability to just stand that little step back, to be allow things to move and be and flow, and where there needs to be an action, that action is able to be undertaken mindfully with the knowledge of what you're doing. It's not a blind reaction. Yeah, so it's not coming out of craving, it's not coming out of resistance, and therefore it produces a completely different effect. Yeah, and so you make wiser choices. Does that cover it for you?
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So this is what I'm doing with the whole asking questions business. I'm just making sure I say, does that cover it for you? See what AI has to say about that. Okay. Any more? Anything anyone else would like to talk about we haven't touched on this evening? I think I've got. Is there anything in chat that I haven't? Hang on. Yes. Just checking your chat, see if there are any questions in there. Okay, just chatting about the Facebook situation. Oh, Lucy, hello.
Hi, Paul. I think it was in a lecture by Alan that I heard him say once that it was something like talking about physical pain, and it was pain is only suffering, or you only suffer from pain when you don't want it to be there. I found that really basically when there's hatred in the mind, that's the only time. Yeah, that's the only time that it basically causes a problem, which I have found really helpful over the years. I just thought that was really really helpful. That's it really. I really like that little phrase.
Which goes back to, my original comment on Wednesday, which is it's just pain. It's just pain. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't become anything else from that. It is literally that it's just doing its job. It's just doing pain. Pain is pain. That's what it does. Yeah. And it is our rejection of it, which is based on ignoring it. And that's why when we reject it, when we reject things, we are giving that thing extraordinary levels of importance. When we just accept it and go, yeah, it's here, then we're not giving it that importance. And its nature is to arise and pass away. And because we ignore it, we don't actually see, just going back to what I was saying with Peter, we fall into these traps of believing that the pain is there. At the ultimate level, the pain is there even when I'm not looking at it. And so I'm always returning to the same pain. And it's not true at all. It's not. Things are so much more ephemeral. And when you get into the deeper, the mature phase of the insight path, that starts to become really obvious. It starts to stand out really, really clearly that there are literally trillions and trillions of contacts, all of which are producing feelings, and we only experience one at a time, but they're happening so rapidly. And the interplay, the weaving of all these components of experience go to create up this apparently solid, separate, reliable, conventional reality. And so we are literally looking under the bonnet of life and going through that apparent solidity and seeing that actually it's not like that at all. It's the most wonderful, extraordinary conjurer's trick. But in order to realize that, you have to be willing to look at painful feelings. You just have to. There's no getting away from it. Don't know why I'm laughing about that. Good luck, everyone. But I don't ask anyone to do anything I haven't done. I will say that. Good evening, Mark. We'll make this the last point, I think, for tonight. How are you? Getting my questions in. How are you? Family well?
I'm really good, thank you, Paul. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for asking.
Oh, you're most welcome. Just following from what Lucy said about Alan, I remember Alan saying something else in the past about, not to worry too much about pain. If it gets really bad, you'll just pass out. It's just pain.
I mean, that's perfect, yeah. That's the spirit we want. No, I mean, we have to be careful of, trying to be too gung-ho about it all. But it is, at the end of the day, Mark, it is pain. Pain is just pain, isn't it?
Sure, yeah. And if you don't pass out, you can go and seek medical attention. But Paul, I was just going to ask on breaking down the sense spaces, like with seeing, there's color and shape. I was just going to ask you specifically about the nose and tasting, how one might mindfully note and break those down, please.
You mean nose and smelling?
Smelling and tasting. Yeah.
And tasting. Yeah, the taste thing is more easy than the smelling. I mean, you've got sweet, sour, salty, and
umami, savory.
You got savory, isn't it? And
bitter.
Bitter, thank you. Yeah, bitter. Umami is the fifth one, isn't it? That's the Marmite taste, which some people like, some others don't like so much. It's Marmite. So the smelling is more difficult because I've never really been able to break it. The only way I've been able to break it down is by the kind of perception that arises as to the kind of smell it is. But it's good enough. Remember, with all this noting, no matter how much we split things up, we're only splitting things up enough to be able to see that things are transient, ungraspable, ephemeral, arising due to conditions, not self. So, whatever we break it down to whatever degree actually works. So I think with taste, you've got more, you've got certain distinctions that you can work with. With smell, slightly different on that account, but smells do indeed arise and pass away, and you can assert what kind of perception arises with the smell. That'll help.
Yeah, I remember asking Brother Tom once on retreat about smell, and he said just keep it simple with pleasant, unpleasant, neutral.
Oh, okay, that's so the feeling component.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I may just share a very quick story with you.
Can I just butt in and say, Brother Tom's advice was perfect for all of us. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Just note in whatever way seems appropriate at that time. Don't waste mental energy trying to get the absolute pristine, perfect concept to attach to it. Just note how it seems at that moment. Please, yeah.
I was just going to share a very, very quick story with you. A couple of weeks ago, I was meditating, and our cat used the litter tray in the ensuite bathroom, and there was all there was a lot of unpleasant feelings around.
Mm.
And, you know, in my mind, I pictured myself, I could almost reach the bathroom door to close it, but I managed to restrain myself. But I guess, you know, over the half hour or whatever it was, I was able to observe the transient nature of the smell and the unpleasant feeling, but it was extremely unpleasant. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Mark. You've left us with an indelible mental image to go away from, to go away with. It's very kind of you. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Mark is my secret plant to make sure that you're all now experiencing unpleasant mental feeling, disagreeable feelings. Yeah. I mean, there is something I could say. I won't say it because it involves a rude word, but yeah, things happen. Things happen.
Yeah, surrender, sweet surrender. Yeah.
Sweet surrender, sweet surrender. That's it.
Thanks, Paul.
Nice to see you, Mark.
Nice to see you too.
Okay, so I think we're done for this evening. Lovely to see you all. I hope some of that was helpful. I'll just get another quick question. Was some of that helpful?
Yes, definitely.
Definitely, so helpful.
Yeah.
I'll let you know what score I got on Zoom AI next time. Hopefully it was better than the last one. I wasn't happy with me at all. And yeah, we'll get together again in a couple of weeks. So thanks for attending, everyone. Lovely to see you all. Thanks for all your comments and for joining in the fun. And yeah, we'll get together again in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Paul.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.